Most people who fish are doing it backwards. They wake up early. They drive to the water. They sit for hours waiting. They cast and reel, burning time, burning energy, hoping luck is on their side. And at the end of the day, they come home with one fish, maybe two, maybe nothing at all. Meanwhile, ancient cultures across the world were catching hundreds of fish at a time, not because they had better equipment, not because they knew some secret bait recipe, but because they understood something most modern anglers completely ignore. Fish are predictable. This technique is over 4,000 years old. Archaeologists have found evidence of it on every continent. It's called passive trapping. And at its core is a design so simple it almost feels like cheating. The funnel trap. Let's imagine a cone. Wide at one end, narrow at the other. Fish swim in through the wide opening, following instinct or chasing bait. Once inside, they cannot figure out how to swim back out. The narrow opening confuses them. They circle, they wait. And when you return hours later, or even the next day, they are still there. This method has been documented going back more than 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptians used woven baskets in the Nile around 350 BCE. They depicted these traps on tomb walls and papyrus documents, showing exactly how they worked. Indigenous peoples in North America built massive stone weirs that stretched across entire rivers, some dating back more than 5,000 years. Cultures in Taiwan, Micronesia, the Pacific Northwest, Australia, and coastal Europe all developed their own versions of the exact same idea, completely independent of each other. Why did so many different civilizations, separated by oceans and thousands of years, all arrive at the same solution? Because it works. Not sometimes. Not with the right conditions. It works because it is built on the biology of fish themselves. It exploits patterns that have not changed in millions of years. And the beautiful part is this. While you sleep, while you set up camp, while you gather firewood or cook breakfast or handle any other task, the trap is working for you. You are not standing there holding a rod. You are not guessing where the fish might be. You are letting nature do the work. This is not lazy fishing. This is smart fishing. This is how our ancestors fed entire communities without modern technology, without sonar, without carbon fiber rods or fluorocarbon lines. Let me walk you through the core principles that make this system so effective, and why modern anglers are missing out by ignoring them. The first one is the most important, and it changes everything once you understand it. Fish do not think, they react. Their behavior is controlled entirely by instinct and conditioning, not by reasoning or choice. Scientists who study fish cognition have confirmed this repeatedly. Fish lack the brain structures required for complex thought. They cannot analyze situations. They cannot weigh options. They cannot plan. What they can do is respond to stimuli. When a fish encounters a barrier, it does not sit and consider its options. It follows the path of least resistance. It moves along the edge, looking for an opening. And if that opening leads inward, it goes inward. This is automatic. This is hardwired. This is predictable. This is the foundation of every successful trap design in human history. The ancient builders understood that you do not need to outsmart a fish. You just need to create conditions where its natural response leads it exactly where you want it to go. Modern anglers spend enormous amounts of time and money trying to trick fish with lures, colors, scents, vibrations, and movements. They are playing a game of deception. They watch videos about the perfect retrieve speed. They debate which color works best in murky water. They buy lures that cost more than a meal. But fish are not fooled by cleverness. They are moved by instinct, and instinct is predictable. It has been predictable for 4,000 years. It will be predictable 4,000 years from now. When you build a funnel trap, you are not trying to fool the fish. You are simply guiding it. You create a structure that looks like shelter. You add bait that smells like food. And you shape the entrance so that swimming in feels natural, but swimming out feels impossible. The fish is not trapped by force. It is trapped by its own behavior. It does exactly what evolution programmed it to do. And that programming leads it directly into your trap. Once you internalize this, you will never look at fishing the same way again. Another powerful principle that ancient cultures figured out is the concept of working with water movement, not against it. Fish move with current. They follow the flow. They position themselves where the water brings food to them rather than chasing prey in random directions. This is energy conservation. A fish that fights current all day burns calories it cannot afford to lose. A fish that positions itself in the right spot gets fed by the river itself. Traditional weirs and stone traps were built to take advantage of this. In tidal areas, ancient builders constructed walls that sat below the waterline during high tide. Fish would swim freely over the barrier, feeding in the shallows, completely unaware that anything had changed. Then, as the tide receded, the water level dropped below the top of the wall. The fish were now trapped inside, unable to escape. This design required no bait, no monitoring, no active participation at all. The ocean itself did the work. The tide did the work. Gravity did the work. The fisherman simply showed up at low tide and collected his catch. In Taiwan, more than 500 of these stone weirs still exist along the coastline of the Penghu Islands. Some stretch nearly 2 miles long and took decades to build. During peak seasons, a single weir could trap over 1,000 pounds of fish in a single tidal cycle. Entire villages were fed by structures that their great-great-grandparents had constructed. In rivers, the approach was slightly different but equally effective. Builders created V-shaped barriers that funneled fish toward a narrow opening. The current pushed the fish along the walls. They followed the structure instinctively, looking for a way through. And the only way through led directly into the trap. Some of these river weirs stretched more than 60 meters across. In British Columbia, archaeologists have documented over 300 individual fish traps in a single harbor, representing more than 150,000 wooden stakes driven into the seabed over centuries. These systems caught salmon, herring, and dozens of other species by the hundreds, and they did it passively, around the clock, for generations. The lesson here is simple but profound. Stop fighting the water, let it work for you. The current is not an obstacle, it is a tool. One of the most overlooked aspects of this ancient method is how little material you actually need to get started. A modern fishing setup can cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Rods, reels, tackle boxes, fish finders, depth sounders, trolling motors, boats, trailers. The industry has convinced people that success requires investment, that better gear equals better results, that you need to spend money to catch fish. But the most effective fish traps in history were built from sticks, stones, and woven plant fibers. Materials that were free, materials that were everywhere, materials that anyone could gather in an afternoon. In the Pacific Northwest, indigenous communities built massive trapping systems using only wooden stakes and woven panels made from cedar bark. The stakes were driven into the riverbed or tidal flat. The panels were lashed between them using natural cordage, and the entire structure could be assembled, adjusted, repositioned, and disassembled using nothing but hands and simple tools. In tropical regions, bamboo and palm fronds serve the same purpose. Bamboo is strong, lightweight, and grows almost everywhere in warm climates. Split it into strips, weave it into panels, and you have a trap that can last for years. In colder climates, willow branches and tree bark provided the raw materials. Willow is flexible when fresh and rigid when dry. Perfect for weaving, perfect for creating the cone shapes that funnel traps require. The point is not that you need to abandon modern tools. If you have wire mesh or nylon netting, use it. The point is that the technique itself requires almost nothing. If you understand the principles, you can improvise a trap from whatever is around you. You can build one in the wilderness with no gear at all. You can build one in your backyard with scrap materials. This is why the method has survived for 4,000 years across every continent and every climate. It does not depend on technology. It does not depend on money. It depends on knowledge. And knowledge, once you have it, costs nothing to use. Another piece most people miss is the psychology of the funnel itself. This is where the design becomes almost elegant in its simplicity. The classic funnel trap design uses two cones, one large, one small. The large cone forms the body of the trap, creating a contained space where fish will be held. The small cone, inverted, forms the entrance. Here is how it works in practice. A fish approaches the trap, attracted by the scent of bait or simply exploring structure. It sees an opening. The opening is wide enough to enter comfortably. It swims through. Now it is inside a larger space. This feels like progress. It feels like moving toward safety or toward food. The space inside is bigger than the entrance. This is reassuring. Fish seek shelter in enclosed spaces, and this feels like shelter. But now the fish is inside a container, and the only exit is a small hole behind it. The same hole it just swam through. Except now from the inside that hole looks different. It is narrow, it points outward, and it is surrounded by the sharpened tips of the stakes or woven material that form the inner funnel. Fish do not reverse well. Their bodies are built for forward propulsion. Their instincts are built around forward movement. When threatened, they flee forward. When exploring, they probe forward. The idea of backing carefully through a narrow opening is simply not how their brains are wired. So the fish circles. It looks for another way out. It pushes against the walls. It finds no exit, and it stays. This is not cruelty. This is physics and biology working together. The fish is perfectly fine inside the trap. It has water. It has space to move. It is not injured. It simply cannot leave. And this is why the design has remained virtually unchanged for thousands of years across dozens of cultures. It exploits a fundamental weakness in fish behavior that no amount of evolution has corrected. Fish have been swimming into funnel traps since the Stone Age. They still cannot figure out how to swim back out. If you want to build your own version, the dimensions matter more than the materials. Pay attention to this part. The entrance should be sized to match your target species. Too large and fish will find their way back out. Too small and they will not enter in the first place. Aim for an opening that is roughly the width of the fish you want to catch, or slightly smaller. This ensures they commit fully before entering. The body should be at least 4 to 5 feet long for larger species. This gives the fish room to swim and reduces panic, which can sometimes lead to desperate escape attempts. A cramped trap creates stress. A spacious trap creates calm. Calm fish stay put. For smaller species, scale down accordingly. A minnow trap might only be 12 inches long. A crayfish trap might be even smaller. Match the trap to the target. The inner funnel should extend at least 6 to 8 inches into the body of the trap. This creates distance between the entrance and the interior space, making it harder for fish to accidentally find the exit while swimming around. And always weight the trap. Rocks inside, rocks tied to the outside, whatever works. A floating trap is a lost trap. It will drift with the current, snag on obstacles, and end up somewhere you never intended. Anchor it properly. If you are finding this valuable, take a second to subscribe. This channel is built for people who want real knowledge, not hype. People who want to understand how things actually work so they can get better results with less wasted effort. If that sounds like you, you are in the right place. Now let me explain something that separates casual trappers from serious ones. Bait placement matters more than bait selection. Most people assume that finding the right bait is the key to success. They obsess over what to use: worms, insects, fish scraps, cheese, bread, chicken liver, whatever they read about online or heard from a friend. But bait selection is only half the equation, maybe less than half. Where you place the bait inside the trap determines whether fish commit fully or retreat at the last moment. The bait should be positioned deep inside the trap, past the funnel entrance. This forces the fish to swim all the way in before it can investigate. If you place the bait too close to the opening, the fish may grab a bite, get what it wanted, and back out before fully entering. You have fed the fish but caught nothing. Position the bait at the far end of the trap. Make the fish work for it. Make it swim past the point of no return before the reward becomes reachable. Many experienced trappers also use bait containers rather than loose bait. A small mesh bag, a pinecone stuffed with scraps, a perforated plastic container with holes drilled in the sides. These release scent continuously over time without letting the fish consume the bait too quickly. Think about it this way. You want the smell to spread through the water, attracting fish from a distance. But you want the actual food to stay out of reach, or at least difficult to access. This keeps fish circling, searching, investigating, and ultimately staying inside the trap longer. If the fish can eat all the bait in 5 minutes, your trap stops attracting new fish after 5 minutes. If the bait releases scent for hours, your trap keeps working for hours. Some traditional designs took this even further. They included separate bait chambers, completely sealed off from the main trap. Fish could smell the food through small openings or mesh barriers, but they could not physically reach it. They stayed nearby, hoping for access, swimming in circles, while the trap entrance remained the only point of entry. This is advanced thinking from people who supposedly had primitive technology. They understood fish behavior better than most modern anglers do today. Another often forgotten element is trap location. This might be the difference between catching nothing and catching a dozen fish overnight. Fish do not spread evenly through a body of water. They are not randomly distributed like dots on a map. They concentrate in specific zones based on food availability, water temperature, oxygen levels, light conditions, and cover. Near structure is almost always better than open water. Submerged logs, rock piles, weed beds, fallen trees, undercut banks, dock pilings. These are the places fish naturally gather. Structure provides safety from predators. Structure creates ambush points for feeding. Structure breaks current and creates resting areas. If you set your trap in the middle of a featureless lake bottom, you might catch something eventually. If you set it next to a submerged log where fish are already congregating, you will catch something tonight. In rivers, the edges of current seams are prime locations. This is where fast water meets slow water, and food particles collect in the transition zone. Fish position themselves here because they can feed efficiently without fighting the full force of the current. They sit in the calm water and pick off whatever the fast water delivers. Set your trap in that transition zone. You are intercepting fish that are already there, already feeding, already in hunting mode. In lakes, drop-offs and transitions between depth zones attract feeding fish. The place where shallow water turns into deep water is a highway for fish movement. Set your trap where the bottom changes character, not in the featureless middle where nothing happens. Tidal zones offer even more predictable patterns. Fish move with the tide, feeding in shallow water during high tide and retreating to deeper water as the tide drops. They follow the same routes repeatedly, day after day, guided by the same lunar cycles their ancestors followed for millions of years. If you position your trap in the path of that movement, you intercept fish without chasing them. You let the tide deliver them to you. The ancient builders did not have sonar or GPS or fish finders. They had observation. They watched the water. They noticed where fish surfaced. They tracked where birds dove. They learned the patterns through patient attention. You can do the same. Before you build a trap, spend time watching the water. Look for movement. Look for ripples. Look for feeding activity. Look for the natural routes fish use when entering and leaving an area. Then place your trap directly in the way. One of the most powerful aspects of this method is that it scales without requiring proportionally more effort. A single funnel trap can catch several fish overnight. But what happens if you set 3 traps instead of 1? Or 5, or 10? Your effort does not triple or quintuple. Building the second trap takes less time than building the first, because you already know what you are doing. Checking multiple traps takes only slightly longer than checking one if they are positioned along the same route, but your results can multiply dramatically. Traditional fishing cultures understood this. They did not rely on one trap. They built systems, networks of traps connected by guiding fences, chains of weirs that funneled fish from open water into smaller and smaller enclosures, entire coastlines engineered for passive harvest. In British Columbia, archaeologists have documented more than 300 individual fish traps in a single harbor, representing the work of generations. Radiocarbon dating shows these traps were used continuously for over 1,000 years. Some were heart-shaped, some were chevron-shaped. All worked on the same basic principle of guiding fish into spaces they could not escape. These systems caught thousands of pounds of fish during peak runs, not through luck, not through skill, with a rod, through intelligent design and patient accumulation. In Taiwan, the stone weirs of Penghu County were community projects. Entire villages worked together to build structures that took decades to complete. The catches were shared among families. The maintenance was shared among families, and the structures lasted for generations, feeding great-grandchildren who had never met the original builders. This is not sport fishing. This is food production. This is systematic thinking applied to a natural resource, and the same principles apply, whether you are trying to feed a village or just trying to bring home a better personal haul. Build more traps. Spread them across different zones. Check them in rotation. One trap might come up empty while another holds a dozen fish. The more traps you operate, the more data you collect about where fish move and when. You start noticing patterns. This spot produces in the morning. That spot produces after rain. The third spot only works when the wind blows from the east. That knowledge compounds over time. Each season you get better. Each year you refine your system. Eventually you are not guessing anymore. You are predicting. Another thing worth understanding deeply is the difference between passive and active trapping, and when to use each approach. Passive trapping is what we have been discussing throughout this video. You build the trap, you set the trap, you leave the trap. You return later to collect whatever has accumulated. The trap works while you do other things. The trap works while you sleep. Active trapping is different. It involves driving fish toward a structure rather than waiting for them to find it. This can dramatically increase your catch rate in a short period, but it requires more effort, more coordination, and often more people. Traditional cultures used both approaches depending on the situation. During large community harvests, groups of fishers would wade into the water in a coordinated line. They would use noise, splashing, sticks, or woven leaf brooms to herd fish in a specific direction. The fish, panicked and disoriented, would flee instinctively in the direction of least resistance. And the fishers would arrange things so that the direction of least resistance led directly into a wading trap or weir. This technique works especially well in shallow water, narrow channels, or small ponds where escape routes are limited. If you can control where the fish cannot go, you can control where they must go. The Heiltsuk people of British Columbia used leaf brooms made from coconut fronds twisted around long ropes for this purpose. A line of people would drag the brooms through the water, creating a wall of disturbance that pushed fish ahead of them. At the end of the drive, a weir or net waited to collect whatever had been herded. Even without a group, you can use this principle on a smaller scale. Wade slowly into shallow water, moving in a wide arc, herding fish ahead of you toward a natural choke point. Position your trap at that choke point. Let the fish's instinct to flee do the work. You can also combine active and passive methods for maximum effect. Set a passive trap overnight. In the morning, before you check it, approach from the opposite direction. Move slowly through the water. Push any nearby fish toward the trap entrance. Then check your catch. You get the benefit of overnight passive accumulation plus the benefit of a morning drive. 2 techniques, 1 trap, better results. Here is something that surprises most people when they first learn about traditional trapping methods. Ancient fish traps were often designed specifically for selective harvest. They were engineered to catch what was needed while releasing what was not. Modern commercial fishing often catches everything. Nets scoop up entire populations indiscriminately. Juvenile fish, that have never reproduced get hauled in alongside mature adults. Bycatch of unwanted species gets discarded dead. This is one of the primary reasons fish populations around the world have declined so dramatically over the past century. But ancient weirs frequently included intentional escape gaps. Small openings in the walls allowed young fish to pass through while trapping adults. Mesh size or stake spacing was chosen deliberately to filter by size. Undersized fish swam out, full-grown fish stayed in. This meant the breeding population was protected. Fish had a chance to reproduce before they were caught, and the fishery could sustain itself indefinitely, generation after generation. In Micronesia, tidal weirs were built with gaps between the stones specifically sized for this purpose. The spacing was not random. It was calculated based on the target species and the size at which those fish reached maturity. In the Pacific Northwest, trap panels could be removed entirely once enough fish had been caught. This allowed the rest of the salmon run to continue upstream to spawn. The people took what they needed. They let the rest go, and the salmon returned the following year. This was not accidental kindness. This was intentional resource management. Ancient people understood something that modern industrial fishing has forgotten. A resource must be protected if it is going to last. If you build your own traps, consider this principle carefully. Size your entrances and mesh spacing to target the fish you actually want. If juveniles get caught, release them. If you catch more than you can use, let the extras go. The trap that feeds you this season should still be feeding you 10 seasons from now. Think long-term, harvest sustainably, leave something for the future. If you are getting value from this, drop a comment below with where you fish or what species you are targeting. This channel grows through people like you sharing what works. The community here is built around real knowledge and real results, and your experience makes it stronger for everyone. Now let me address something that trips up almost everyone who tries passive trapping. For the first time, timing matters more than most people realize. Fish do not behave the same way at all hours. Their activity levels change based on light, temperature, pressure, and biological rhythms. Understanding these patterns can double or triple your catch rate with zero additional effort. Dawn and dusk are peak feeding times for most species. This is when fish are most active, most aggressive, and most likely to investigate bait. If you set your trap just before dusk and check it just after dawn, you are capturing the two highest activity windows of the day. Water temperature affects feeding behavior dramatically. Cold water slows metabolism. Fish in cold water eat less frequently and move more slowly. Warm water speeds metabolism. Fish in warm water need to eat more often and are more active. This means your trap might produce heavily in summer and poorly in winter. It means your spring results might be different from your fall results. Pay attention to temperature trends and adjust your expectations accordingly. Barometric pressure also plays a role, though this is less understood. Many experienced fishers report that fish feed aggressively before a storm front arrives, when pressure is dropping. After the front passes and pressure rises, activity often decreases. Moon phases affect fish behavior in tidal areas and even in landlocked lakes. Many species feed more actively during full and new moons. Traditional fishing cultures tracked lunar cycles carefully and planned their biggest harvests around these periods. The point is not that you need to become a meteorologist or astronomer. The point is that results vary, and the variation is not random. If your trap produces well one day and poorly the next, there is probably a reason. Pay attention, look for patterns. Over time, you will learn when to expect results and when to lower your expectations. One more element that separates effective trappers from everyone else is persistence and patience. This method does not always produce instant results. You set the trap, you wait, you check it. Sometimes you find fish, sometimes you find nothing. The temptation when you find nothing is to conclude that the method does not work, that trapping is not for you, that you should go back to rod and reel where at least you feel like you are doing something. Resist that temptation. Sometimes the trap is in the wrong location. Move it. Sometimes the bait is wrong. Change it. Sometimes conditions are poor. Wait for conditions to improve. Sometimes you just need more time. Ancient fishers did not expect every trap to produce every day. They built redundancy into their systems. They accepted variability as part of the process. And they trusted that over time, the method would deliver. The first night you set a trap, you are guessing. You picked a location based on limited information. You used bait based on what you had available. You do not yet know if this particular spot produces fish or not, but the 5th night, the 10th night, by then you have data. You know which locations work and which do not. You know which bait attracts attention and which gets ignored. You know what time of day produces the best results. Each failed attempt teaches you something. Each empty trap narrows down the possibilities. And eventually, if you persist, you dial in a system that works reliably. Modern culture has trained us to expect immediate feedback. We cast a line and want a bite within minutes. We tap a button and expect instant delivery. We have lost the patience that sustained our ancestors through lean times. But the funnel trap rewards patience. It rewards observation. It rewards the willingness to let time work in your favor while you attend to other things. Set your trap, walk away, do something else, come back later, trust the process. Adjust based on results, and keep going. The fish have been swimming into these traps for 4,000 years. They are not going to stop now. Let me leave you with something to think about as you go forward. The modern fishing industry wants you to believe that success requires better gear. Fancier rods made from aerospace materials, reels with more ball bearings, electronics that show you exactly where the fish are hiding, lures designed by engineers and tested in laboratories, boats with more horsepower, gear with higher price tags. There is nothing wrong with good equipment if you enjoy it and can afford it. Fishing can be a hobby worth investing in. But the most successful fishing cultures in human history used sticks and stones. They used woven plant fibers and sharpened stakes. They built structures from mud and rocks that lasted for centuries. They caught more fish with less effort than most modern anglers will ever experience. The difference was not technology. The difference was understanding. They understood how fish move. They understood how water flows. They understood how to build simple structures that worked around the clock, multiplying results without multiplying labor. They understood that patience beats urgency and that systems beat luck. You now have access to that same understanding. 4,000 years of accumulated wisdom from every continent on Earth, distilled into principles you can apply starting today. You do not need to master everything at once. You do not need to build a massive weir system or coordinate a village harvest. You just need to start somewhere. Build one simple funnel trap. Set it in a spot where fish already gather. Bait it with something that smells appealing. Weight it down. Leave it overnight. Check it in the morning. See what happens. Learn from the results. Adjust and try again. One smart choice applied consistently over time can transform your results forever. That is how compounding works. That is how expertise develops. That is how ancient people turned a simple idea into food security for entire civilizations. The fish are waiting. The technique has been proven across 4,000 years of human history. The only variable left is whether you will actually use what you have learned. Go build something, go catch something, and when you do, come back and tell us about it. The knowledge is yours now. What you do with it is up to you.